following me around, hoping I'll throw them something. Eva, Eva, Eva. Oh yeah, get it, get it. The rooster's new. He's not as comfortable with me as the hens are. Good morning. It is January 10th. We're going to do a quick orchard walk around and see which apples are still hanging on the tree. We're going to visit the seedling rows, the apple breeding trial rows, and see what's hanging out there. Take some notes on that stuff, what it tastes like. What did I just hear out there in the woods? Don't know. As you can see behind me, there were some apples left on this tree. This is Franken-tree, a multi-grafted tree with something in the neighborhood of 150 different varieties on it. Only a few of those produced this year, very, very few. It pretty much took the year off because the previous year was a really heavy year and it just kind of used up all its resources and took a year off. But there's two varieties that are still hanging on here, so let's go check those out to start with. This one up here is Lady Williams, and I talk about this all the time because it's interesting in that it's the latest apple. Usually it's not ripe for about another, well, 20 days. So my expectation at this point is that it'll still be slightly starchy. That doesn't mean it's not any good at all. It's just not at its best usually until just around, it always seems to be just right around February 1st. As you can hear, it's very crisp and crunchy. It's a hard fleshed apple. Just listen to this again. It's quite a tart apple. I mean, it tends to taste a little like, vitamin C tablet or something like that. When more of that starch converts into sugar as it ripens, it's going to sweeten up and balance that acidity a little bit. The flavor is great. It's got a pretty rich, I guess, just generically fruity flavor. Yeah, what's not to like, basically, this late in the season and later. So this is important because a lot of the apples we're going to go look at in the seedling trials right now are descended from this apple. And I picked it for this reason, that it's really late. And the combination of that and that it's just a good apple, to have those two in one apple is a good start. So I see something else over here. I have no idea what it is. Let's go check it out. This is Unlabeled. Feels like it's a little soft. It would help to know what this actually is. It's got like a little bit of an off flavor. The texture is soft, but it's not mealy. It's okay. I mean, if this is what I had to eat, I would probably eat it. Yeah, there's a really peculiar off flavor in there, almost like if you used your cutting board to cut up some onions and garlic and it got on your knife and then you cut an apple on the board and then ate it. That's what it tastes like a stale onion flavor. And it's lingering. Like that's all I can taste now. It's like sitting on my palate. So that's not too cool. Okay, this is just a quick stop to show people who remember my chip budding video where I chip budded this nectarine onto almond rootstock, and this is the only one that survived. One of them I killed by accident and the other one just didn't take. I think it actually dried out, like the bud dried out before it could heal and grow. But this, as bad as it looks, is enough. That shoot right there, this 1.5 inch shoot, is the new variety. It's a nectarine. This spring, this should grow a lot and everything else will be kept from growing. And that's the goal. Like, it doesn't really matter that it didn't grow a lot. It survived and it's ready to go in the spring. These two I just let grow back just in case. So these are just still the rootstock. All right, here is the pink Parfait tree. As you can see, it did quite well this year. I've picked tons of apples off it. They're big, they're beautiful. Normally, I would think of this apple as being a little past its prime right now, but actually this one is probably just sliding past its peak, and it's been peaking just in the last week or so. Very nice apple, beautiful, large. Really, this just continues to impress and it keeps holding up to scrutiny. The only real problem I could say with it is scab. Otherwise, it's a remarkably good apple. It hangs to the tree really well. Like, some of them fall off, but not very many. Okay. Yeah, it's still perfect. It's reddened up quite a bit. This will vary depending on, like, each apple might have more or less red in it. That's pretty average probably right now. There's a good measure of acidity, but there's enough sweetness to balance it, especially this late in the season. Flavors, again, mild berries and something like honey. In some years it's very, very distinctively honey. In other years it's kind of honey-like. But I find that the more they hang and the longer they ripen, the more they get that honey flavor. And that's certainly been true this year. Yeah, I couldn't really recommend this enough for anyone who lives in a climate where these can hang for this long. The question is, what is that limit? And I have no idea because no one's testing it, I guess. Don't assume too easily that they're not going to make it, you know. What's the cutoff point in terms of an actual, like, low temperature or how long it stays cold and stuff like that? I mean, these will, you know, tolerate having, like, snow on them and, like, ice forming in the stem wells. You know, I'll come out here and there's sheets of ice on the buckets right next to it. Not a problem. I mean, it's not a problem at all. But at some point, obviously, if you live in Alaska or something, it's going to become a problem. But when that cutoff point is, we don't know yet until a lot of people test these apples. You know, homesteaders, home producers, backyard orchardists, like the value of an apple that hangs that late and is at just, you know, at outstanding quality that late, you can have fresh fruit right off the tree. Well, geez, I mean, pretty obviously awesome. I've also saved quite a bit of open pollinated seed from this, quite a bit of intentionally crossed seed from this that I'll have available real soon, probably this month, January, at least in February. Okay, as you can see, there's some gold rush here, and they actually hang on the tree pretty well, but they just don't seem to be at their best when hung on the tree. I tried for years to hang them thinking that I could just eat them off the tree instead of storing them, but they seem to be better picked early and then stored and eaten out of storage. And the ones in storage are getting really good now, but even the ones in the fridge that I picked early are not actually even at their best yet, and they're just getting more and more flavorful. Well, this one is really quite good. They're usually not this good off the tree. Usually the texture goes off more, but this is good. Still, yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. They also crack a lot. You can see this one's kind of rotten. They tend to crack on the tree a lot if you let them hang, and that's an important thing to avoid in a late hanging apple, is that there are varieties that would hang okay, and they would survive if they didn't crack, but as soon as they crack, they start to go bad. Yeah, that's good. I think if this were used in breeding or growing these from seed, I think you could potentially end up with a good late hanging apple. This one is just not at its best that way. But what it's good at is you can pick it early, store it in the refrigerator, and it's going to be peaking after Lady Williams on February 1st. So that's going to fill in that period in the spring through February and March and probably, you know, further. And that's really valuable too. Okay, the story with this apple is it's called Katherine, and I have something labeled on Frankentree as Katherine that I really, really like, and it's usually hangs into December, and it's best eating in December. So I got a clean scion because my Frankentree is infected with the virus, right? So I thought, well, I'm going to get a clean scion, you know, from a friend, or hope that it's clean. And I got this from my friend, and I'm not sure that it's the same. I keep like waffling whether it's the same variety or not. Yeah, it's soft. Good flavor though. Maybe one of these will be better. That's better. I think this is probably the same variety. I just can't say for sure yet. It could just be that the growing conditions are real different. It has a late hanging quality, and it tastes somewhat familiar. This is incredibly rich flavored right now. Just really, really dense flavor-wise, lots of sugar. And it's edible, but the texture is definitely past its prime. And I think, you know, I normally think of this as a little bit earlier apple, somewhere in December, like around Christmas. It's probably its usual peak on the other tree if it's the same variety. But yeah, it shows promise. This tree just hasn't really produced a lot of quality apples for some reason. Maybe it just isn't getting quite enough water for this variety. You know, maybe this variety just needs that little bit extra cultural care. But yeah, it definitely shows a lot of promise. And just flavor-wise, yeah, it's like, wow, lots of flavor. Like, you would never find an apple that flavorful in the grocery store. Let's try one more specimen here. This one is slightly larger. A lot of flavor, pretty rich flavor. It's not as rich as Katherine there that we just tasted, but it's very good. But the texture is past its prime, I would say. More like 3 weeks ago, probably peaked. I know I took one to my mom's house on New Year's Day for dinner, and we tasted it, and it was a little better than this, and that was like 10 days ago. But that's still pretty late. Definitely a good late hanging apple. I think this one deserves to be grown and disseminated. Very sadly, I have almost no good scion wood. But yeah, this one should be spread around. It's very, very rare in North America. I think it's very rare in England, and obviously being really late, good quality, excellent flavor. Late hanging, it has a place, I think, in breeding these apples. It's another line. The more different lines we can bring together of all these kind of like really late hanging apples and start to mix those up, I think, the better. And this one should be in the mix, I believe. No, this is an unlabeled apple. I called it potentially Norcross Red Flesh. I don't know what it is. I keep saying it looks like it's related to Pink Parfait, and then once in a while I'll taste it and I'll ask myself, is this just Pink Parfait? My typical impression of this is that compared to Pink Parfait, it's more watery, less flavorful, less sugar, and a lighter, crispier texture. Yep. Yes, all of that, but it's so remarkably similar. The coloration, the texture, it's very, very similar. It's just like it's lighter and it's crispier. I think I'm going to keep this variety because obviously, like, look at the productivity is insane. The texture is just top notch in terms of just being like light and crispy and really, really juicy. Right now it's a little less red, but I swear it has the same flavors. It has the same honey flavor. It just has less of them. Who knows? Maybe it's just Pink Parfait. Maybe there's no real genetic difference and it's just the fact that this one's growing here and that one's growing there. And here again is another sample of Lady Williams, so let's taste that right now. Yeah, this one's even less ripe. Honestly, I'll be surprised if this is ripe by February 1st. Okay, now that all the leaves have fallen off, we can kind of see what these guys are doing and that there's quite a few apples left in here. So let's taste some of them. This is a section of ones where I don't know one of the parents. So one of the parents is Grenadine and the other parent I don't know. So, but I'm going to say, there's like a huge percentage chance that this is a Wixon seedling because it's so small and crabby looking. Wow. It's got like a hard, waxy flesh, very yellow flesh. I bet this has like a huge antioxidant level from that yellow flesh. It is slightly astringent. It's got a hard flesh. It would probably press really well for juice, but look at the size. I mean, it's really, really small. But under better conditions, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if it'd get twice as big, and that's big enough. There's not much flavor, though. It's just like lots and lots of sugar and quite a bit of tannin. If it were bigger, I would be thinking, oh, maybe it could make a cider apple, but there's also a lot of scab on it, so I'm going to say probably not going to be that interesting. Let's test the sugar level, though. Yeah, now we're getting up there. That's nearly 25%. 25 bricks, 25% sugar, as I understand it, how it works. Lots of sugar, but I don't know. I'm not going to cut it down this year. Fish that down. This is another cross of unknown parentage. All I know is that one parent is Grenadine and the other parent is one of about, I think it's 5 different parents, and maybe I'll be able to guess. It's become very flavorful and pretty sweet. The texture's no good though. I mean, it's not horrible. I could definitely eat it, but it's kind of soft. Here, there's no crunch. I've had a lot of worse apples. Like if you could take this flavor and give this apple a good texture, actually it could be very good. But yeah, again, I'm not going to cut this down this year, but I don't think it's going to make the grade in the long run. And I don't know what the parent is. It's probably Lady Williams. Hopefully I'll be able to read my own notes later. So you can see here how this branch is broken. That's because I'm culling this variety. It just isn't any good. It's just kind of boring. I also bent the tag. So I either bend the tag like that and or break a branch, so I know. Flavor-wise, it's just not there. It didn't hold its texture. It didn't improve as it hung on the tree. It's soft. It's developed some off flavors. It's mealy and smushy, so it's not going to press well. I'm really looking forward to actually culling some of this stuff out because I want to uncrowd these rows. That might sound weird, but yeah, I'm like excited to start culling. I'm just trying to curb myself so I don't cull anything that I should have kept. Okay, this is the second year I've tasted this apple. I've had a lot of problems with the scab and cracking. As you can see, like most of the apples aren't very good, and that's probably a deal killer with this one. Same conclusion as last time. It's very tannic, kind of puckery, lots of flavor. It seems very sweet, but we can go ahead and test that right now. If the cultural characteristics turned out okay, it might make a good cider apple actually. It's got a lot of flavor. I bet it has a lot of sugar and it's got the tannin. If it presses well. Now the texture, yeah, this is kind of like a classic cider apple. It's very puckery, and I don't think, I think the texture would be great. I think once you ground this up, it would press out pretty clean. I mean, maybe not crystal clear. Like some varieties, they just break up just right, and you press them, and the juice comes out really clear. Maybe it might, but it's not going to be like applesauce either and be real cloudy. As far as an eating apple, no. It also has developed what you call a nutty flavor, which I'm not crazy about. It develops in some apples later in the season, notably Margil and Chestnut Crab are good examples, and it definitely has a little bit of that going on too. Let's test the sugar though. Clean this off a little bit. My guess is over 20%, under 25. Absolute minimum 18, 20. And in spite of being kind of dry, textured flesh, it has a lot of juice. Yeah, just over 20 that time, so 20. Think about this. Any of you guys that live in a milder climate, and this isn't just, you know, sunny California. I mean, I'm in Northern California. It's not like, you know, it's not palm trees and stuff. There's frost in the garden, you know, all the time. The top layer of the soil is frozen, blah, blah, blah. But think about the value of really late hanging cider apples. Imagine like if your main cider crop came in really late, then you could have all kinds of other work out of the way and just have, you know, in the dark days of winter time to like process this fruit instead of having it come in the rush, especially if you do other kinds of farming and preserving and stuff like that. You don't have, you know, you get this rush in the fall where you have to do all this stuff at once and everything kind of gangs up on you. So having these apples that ripen really late, and you can go out in, you know, say December and pick all your cider apples and then make cider. That sounds pretty appealing. Okay, this one is Grenadine with Lady Williams. It feels a little light. Kind of thinking maybe it's going to be kind of a dry, pithy flush. Whoa. Wow, what a curious flavor. It almost tastes like vanilla. It tastes almost like some kind of familiar candy from my childhood, which I can't place. Not like a fruity candy at all. It's more like vanilla along those lines, but it's actually pretty strong. I could see with a better textured apple and other good qualities, it could be interesting. In this case, no. We have a real dry flesh, a lot of tannin. Again, you know, that comes from Grenadine. Like, Grenadine is a pretty primitive apple, so by using it, you know, the point is to breed those primitive genes out of it gradually, but, you know, it's going to reduce the number of good apples I get. And Grenadine tends to have a little bit of a harsh tannin to it, and this just got more of that. So there's really not much to recommend this apple. You see all these beautiful speckles. That's definitely from Grenadine. The red is from Grenadine. The level of dry, puckery tannins in this makes it inedible. Like, you know, my lips are sticking to my teeth and stuff. It's very, very astringent. Yeah, I don't see this being useful at all in any way. But I'm going to let it grow another year because of that weird, peculiar flavor, and I just want to see what it does for another year or two. Okay, this one was really productive, and see if I can find something that looks just on the riper side. You can see there's a lot of green left in it. You know, I don't think it's really ripe yet, and it's got numerous other problems. It's cracking. It looks like it's ripening unevenly. That's another primitive trait, where like the top looks a lot riper than the bottom. It's hard. It's very sweet. Flavors, whatever. Nothing much there. Okay, my battery's about to die, so we're going to rush this. Grenadine Lady Williams again. Again, we got an extra dose of that Grenadine pucker. Way too much tannin to eat. Bad texture. Nothing to recommend that one. And we're gonna call that one. This one is again probably the same thing. Feels like it's been on the tree way too long. It's definitely been on the tree too long. Kind of mealy, not much flavor, just kind of a boring yellow apple flavor. Very little red pigment to the flesh. This is Grenadine Lady Williams yet again. Nope. Same thing, way too puckery to eat. I don't even think that's going to be a cider apple. And then this one has the obvious problem. I think this is golden russet, that it's cracking badly. And, you know, that's just, you just can't do anything with that. It looks like it was probably scabby, and it cracked. It just looks kind of diseased and not very good. So this is an example of something that's just really, really primitive. I mean, look how green that bottom is. The flesh is green. It's bitter. Low sugar, it's woody. There's just nothing at all to recommend this in any way, so this is getting called too. Okay, that's it for today, and that's probably all the more Apple videos we're going to have for this year. And unless I do something on like training or whatever, pruning, etc. I'm excited to start cutting some of these out, actually. I know that sounds weird, but that's how it is. It's pretty exciting to think that every single one of these trees is absolutely genetically unique and is going to produce a different kind of apple. It's really quite the adventure to get to taste these as they come out. Later.